me put this in plain English. If slow southern city is still how you picture Richmond, that picture is already outdated. And that's why this video matters, because the developments happening right now, not someday, not hypothetically, are changing Richmond in lasting ways. What's happening here isn't loud, it's not flashy, and it's not being advertised on a billboard driving down 95. It's quieter than that. You notice it when Broad Street feels busier on a random Tuesday, or when a place you used to walk past without thinking suddenly has a wait list in the middle of the afternoon. That kind of momentum doesn't announce itself, but it compounds. This is how cities people once called hidden gems stop being hidden. This is how areas the market once overlooked starts getting attention, because the people paying attention right now aren't chasing hype. They're noticing pattern. Neighborhoods are changing how they function. Daily routines are shifting, and some areas are transitioning faster than others. And here's the part most people don't like to hear. Once buzz shows up, opportunity usually looks very different. So if you live here, or you're watching this because you're considering relocating to Richmond, this isn't just interesting, it's useful, because by the end of this video, you'll understand what's driving these changes and how they're reshaping daily life across the metro area. I've been in Richmond long enough to see multiple change cycles. There was a long stretch where the city felt spread out and predictable. If you found something new, it was because you intentionally went there. You didn't just stumble into it. That's not how it feels now. I'll drive routes I've driven for years and catch myself thinking, when did this start feeling more active? Even in places like Carytown, which have long been established, the difference isn't volume, it's consistency. More people using the area throughout the day. This doesn't feel like Richmond copying another city. It feels like Richmond settling into a more intentional growth pattern. And for context, I'm a native Richmonder and I specialize in helping people relocate here. I've watched these shifts happen in real time, not just through data or headlines. I'm breaking this down the same way I do when someone asks, what's actually changing and why? And once you see it, a lot of recent changes stop feeling random. Richmond stopped spreading outward and started building inward. This is the shift a lot of people miss. Richmond didn't decide to get bigger. It decided to get tighter. Instead of pushing farther out, the city concentrated growth closer in. You see it in places like the Diamond District and Scott's Addition. Buildings closer together, streets active at different times of day, business supported by people living nearby. That's not sprawl. That's intentional density. Many people assume they don't want this until they experience it. Then the questions change. That's walkable? That's right there. I wouldn't need my car for this? Not persuasion, practical math. Along Broad Street, areas that once shut down after business hours now stay active because people actually live there. Most new residential development is concentrated in a small number of core neighborhoods. Growth isn't measured in miles anymore. It's measured in usable blocks. When cities build inward, momentum stacks, activity supports businesses, density supports walkability. Each decision reinforces the next. That's why these areas don't just look different, they function differently. And just to say it out loud, if you're watching this because you're trying to figure out how this actually applies to you, you can reach out anytime. I help people make sense of where Richmond is growing and what that means for daily life. Not just what looks good on a map. No pressure, just clarity. Most people don't expect the river to shape their daily routine. They think of it as a feature, a view, something you notice on weekends. Living near it changes that. Around Rockets Landing, the river functions less like scenery and more like structure. Mornings start with movement along the Capitol Trail. Walks happen without planning. Bikes roll out towards downtown or east toward nature. The James isn't something you go to here. It's something life naturally orbits. From Rockets Landing, access works differently. You're close enough to downtown to feel connected, but far enough east that the pace shifts. Fewer through trips, less noise spillover. The river creates a buffer that changes how the day feels cycles before you even realize it. At night, that difference becomes more noticeable. Traffic tapers, lights reflect off the water, conversations linger a little longer. The neighborhood doesn't shut down, it settles. The river becomes a backdrop that slows things down without isolating you. That's what makes Rocket's Landing unique. It's riverfront living without the constant churn, active without being crowded, connected without feeling compressed. That balance is rare. Think about this for a second. Would you rather start your day with a river walk or with immediate access to the city core? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious which one fits your rhythm better. Richmond's energy right now isn't coming from one big opening or one headline restaurant. It's coming from how certain areas are stitched together. Mixed use doesn't always mean tall buildings or packed sidewalks. Sometimes it looks quieter and works better because of it. You see that clearly around Libby and Grove. This isn't about nightlife. It's about daily rhythm. Shops, restaurants, services, and residential all sitting close enough that errands naturally turn into lingering. You head out for one thing, coffee, groceries, a quick stop, and then you stay. Maybe you start at Cameo Cakery because you need a dessert for later. Then you realize you're already there, so you swing by Beijing on Grove for dinner instead of driving somewhere else. Nothing about that was planned. It just made sense in the moment. That's the mixed-use effect most people miss. What makes Libby and Grove work is scale, short blocks, easy crossings, places designed for people who are already nearby, not for destination traffic. You're not navigating a parking strategy or timing a reservation window. You're just moving through a few connected blocks that feel usable at almost any time of day. That changes behavior. Food next to retail, services next to homes, walkable without trying to be trendy. And that kind of setup holds activity longer than people expect. Not loud, not flashy, just consistent, even on a random weekday afternoon. That's why clusters like this outperform single destinations. Richmond didn't just lean into density, it leaned into proximity that fits real daily life. The result is a city that feels active without feeling hectic. Places where walking replaces driving, where chance run-ins replace scheduling, where movement feels natural instead of planned. And once that becomes normal, expectations shift. People walk more, drive less, spend more time outside their homes without needing a reason. That's when the city starts feeling smarter and more connected. Every city that lasts has anchors doing unglamorous work. In Richmond, that's institutions like VCU and VCU Health. They're not just campuses or hospitals, they're employment engines. Students, faculty, researchers, nurses, and support staff, tens of thousands of people on steady schedules with long-term ties to the city. That consistency stabilizes everything around it. Rentals stay occupied. Coffee shops stay busy. Neighborhoods don't hollow out during slower cycles. Downtown is quietly adapting too. Office buildings converting to residential keeps that core active beyond business hours. That doesn't grab headlines, but it changes how downtown functions day to day. Most people don't move to a city for infrastructure. They move despite it, and then realize it shapes everything. Richmond runs on a few quiet spines. Broad Street, 95, the bridges over the James. Locals don't measure commutes in miles. They measure them by which bridge and which ramp they're already thinking about before grabbing their keys. That's not theory. That's muscle memory. The GRTC Pulse added something more valuable than speed. Predictability. Same route, same rhythm, less guesswork. Reliability is what lowers stress, and Richmond is quietly proving that. In Shockoe Bottom, flood mitigation projects changed everything by turning a historically risky area into one people can actually plan around. South of the river, corridors like Richmond Highway are being rebuilt to connect people to jobs, services, and neighborhoods that used to feel cut off. And in the background, the Port of Richmond keeps goods and jobs moving without asking for attention. Most residents never think about it, but it's part of why the city keeps functioning even when other places wobble. Here's where assumptions usually fall apart. Most relocation buyers aren't choosing between city and suburb. They're choosing how much friction they're willing to live with once daily life kicks in. In practice, that's why so many people I work with don't end up in Richmond City, even if they originally thought they would. Places like Short Pump keep showing up for one simple reason. Daily life runs clean. Errands make sense. Roads feel logical. Parking isn't a strategy. coffee doesn't require circling the block, and the commute into the city still lands around 20 to 25 minutes. I say this to people all the time. Living in Shore Pump, you have just about anything and everything you could possibly want within a 3-mile radius. Grocery stores, medical offices, restaurants, retail, gyms, schools. You can structure your entire week without ever needing to leave that area if you don't want to. And for a lot of people, that kind of containment lowers stress more than they expect. If you want that same convenience, but on a smaller, more intentional scale, that's where walkable mixed-use communities come in. Places like Greengate or West Broad Village were designed around the idea that daily life should happen close together. Grocery store, school or daycare, dinner out, a quick stop for clothes, hair appointment, gym, all without getting back in the car. That design choice matters. When daily tasks stack efficiently, routines stop feeling like logistics puzzles and start feeling manageable. Further south, Midlothian appeals for a different reason. Space becomes part of the equation. Newer housing stock, quieter evenings, mornings that feel less rushed. For people prioritizing predictability and room to breathe, that trade-off makes sense. People aren't chasing the hottest zip code. They're chasing daily life that works. And once friction drops, once errands, commutes, and routines stop dominating the day, priorities rearrange themselves naturally. Not because someone changed their mind, but because the environment started supporting how they actually live. Most people start by looking for a neighborhood. That makes sense. It's the easiest thing to search, the easiest thing to compare. But what actually determines whether people feel settled a year later isn't the neighborhood name, it's the alignment. Richmond rewards people who understand patterns instead of chasing hype. Growth clusters. Infrastructure matters. Commute routes matter. How often you're in the car versus on foot matters. Daily routines matter more than labels ever will. That's where a lot of assumptions fall apart. Walkability, space, quiet energy, none of those exist in a vacuum. They only make sense in the context of how your days unfold, where you're going most often, what times of day you're out, how much friction you're willing to tolerate before it starts to wear on you. One thing I've noticed over the years is that the people who feel most settled here a year later aren't the ones who chase the perfect neighborhood on paper. They're the ones who paid attention to how long errands took, how predictable their days felt, and how often they were in the car versus on foot. That's usually the difference between feeling confident about the move and feeling like something's slightly off, even if everything looks good on paper. When people get this right, they almost always say the same thing a year later. I'm glad we didn't rush this. So out of everything we just covered, what surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments. That feedback helps shape what I break down next, and it helps other people see part of Richmond they might not be noticing yet. Richmond rewards people who understand how the city actually works, not the ones chasing the loudest neighborhood names. We walk through inward growth, river-driven lifestyle shifts, mixed-use energy, stability engines, and the quiet infrastructure holding everything together. If you're thinking about moving to Richmond, buying here, or selling strategically, you don't need hype. You need clarity. And just so there's no confusion, if you reach out, it's me you're talking to. I'm a relocation specialist, a native Richmonder, and I help people line up lifestyle, location, and timing so the move still feels right long after the boxes are unpacked. All my contact information is in the description below. Call, text, email, or grab a time on my calendar anytime. And if you want to keep going, queue up my neighborhood playlist. It breaks down real trade-offs, daily life, and the parts of Richmond most people overlook before those areas stop being underrated.